So, welcome to everyone. On the occasion of this special Dhamma talk on the topic of the weariness of samsara. One's apologies for running over time somewhat. This was, in a sense, unavoidable. So, this is the feeling of weariness, which, though something which is arguably at times something which makes one feel discomfort, this weariness is to be welcomed. And is what will lead to true happiness, which is something which transcends the happiness derived through expectations which arise due to a deep ignorance of what is happening and the truth of the way things are. Something which actually leads to a constant state of unease in life due to fundamentally the unstable nature of this existence. In fact, this existence is not only unstable but is a massive mirage and is a very, very big delusion, and as one develops insight, understanding into the reality of what is in effect very, very different from what one normally perceives in life, then anxiety gradually dissolves and melts away, which is due to the fact that what has caused any fear and anxiety in the form of expectations about one's life, about existence, gradually dissipates and disappears with the gradual dissolving of the notion of I, me and mine. This notion of I, me and mine is like a hard core of delusion, which is at the heartwood of unsatisfactoriness, the noble truth of unsatisfactoriness, and in most cases something which takes a long period of time to totally dissolve and disappear, though the enlightened ones do say that with effort, it is very possible indeed to be able to realize the truth within a relatively short space of time, namely even within a minimum period of 7 days, if one really strives. That is the nature of the practicability of these teachings, something which drew oneself to these teachings at a very young age. One was deeply preoccupied with this question of unsatisfactoriness and how to escape from it, as are indeed most beings in this world. The vast majority of beings do not know how to escape from unsatisfactoriness. And the encountering of these teachings is something which is said to be very rare indeed, as if one had been wandering in a thick forest or a great desert and one had encountered by chance, as it were, some path, though actually the encountering of these teachings doesn't happen by chance, but because of the rare nature of finding this path, it is as if one had come across it by chance. After what the enlightened ones say is a very, very long period of time, due to the very, very powerful nature of delusion, the forces of what we call Mara, which is in effect the force which is working against the force of Dharma, the force of Adharma, all things which are working towards the proliferation of this process of continuance, as opposed to, in inverted commas, discontinuance. Very profound concept. And if one were to approach someone on the street, any Tom, Dick or Harry, and say that there is no I, no me, no mine, there is no person, there is no self, there is actually no personality, then it's very possible that many would find that very, very alien indeed. And there may be some who would think this to be crazy. But the nature of reality is very, very different indeed from what is normally perceived. And this whole process of samsara, the process of continued being, now here and now there, this restless process is due to a thick crust of ignorance which is only shattered with the attainment of stream entry. And even then, the job is not complete. And in order to rub out this stain of the delusion of self, it does take strenuous effort. Though once one has shattered the basic delusion of personality, then one will have seen the truth of the way things are, to the point where one will never forget it, and one will, within, as it says in the texts, a maximum of 7 lives, or in other words, several lives, attain to full liberation. It is only a matter of time. But this initial stage of the realization of stream entry is said to be the most difficult, because the transition from being what is referred to as a worldling, in inverted commas, to one who has attained to the first stage of liberation, stream entry, is a very, very significant and very, very big change. And one's whole view and perception of, in inverted commas, the world will change profoundly. And it was only the enlightened ones that revealed this truth in this way, and showed that this view, this idea, is such a massive delusion, the view of personality. We can see clearly that the physical body is non-self. The physical body breaks up, turns to dust, returns to the great earth. But even then, it is necessary to really focus on the nature of the body, because we have become accustomed for such a very long period of time with identifying with the body as being I, me and mine, in spite of the fact that we can actually, without much difficulty, envisage this body breaking up and returning to the earth. And yet it does seem that there is some sort of I, me and mine here. Due to the strength of what has caused our unsatisfactoriness, the power of craving, the notion of self is reinforced, and even though it may be clear to the vast, vast majority of people in this world that the body is non-self, beings will clutch at straws and cling to something as being a self, such as a soul, which is taught in the Abrahamic religions. Or there are some who cling to the notion of the consciousness as being I, me or mine. But the bodhisattvas, the seekers of truth prior to full enlightenment, rejected even the notion that the consciousness is I, me and mine, delving deep into the realm of insight knowledge, and finally shattering this delusion of self and realizing that even the consciousness itself is something which appears and continues where the conditions for it are present to do so. And when those conditions are not present, it does not arise. And thereby, the bodhisattvas, upon attainment of full enlightenment, realize something which is concealed, as it were, over a very, very long period of time until another fully enlightened one arises in the world and re-reveal this to the world. And it does take a very, very long period of time. During periods in the cosmos when there is no Dharma present, there are no fully enlightened ones present, or when a bodhisattva does not encounter the teachings due to the lack of presence of fully enlightened ones, during these long periods which last for aeons of time, the bodhisattvas are reborn very many times indeed, in a process whereby they themselves, without any external help, finally realize this truth. Even the arahants are aided by the teachings of the fully enlightened ones. It is due to the efforts of the fully enlightened ones that all the arahants are able, including the chief disciples, such as the Venerable Sariputta and the Venerable Moggallana, are able to realize these teachings, without which it would not be possible for them to do so, due to the extremely subtle nature and the clarity, the sheer clarity of these teachings, which I was very impressed with as a young boy of 13 years old, is something which will shorten our journey, because the enlightened ones point out very, very clearly the path to enlightenment. The fact that there is a big problem, the problem of unsatisfactoriness, first of all, and the cause of it, but together with the first noble truths, they reveal that there is a deliverance from, a cessation of suffering and unsatisfactoriness, and a very clear path leading to the realization of that goal. Very methodical path. I myself was born as a Christian, but was never particularly impressed by those teachings, other than the fact that the teachings of Jesus Christ are permeated with kindness and compassion and so on, but the aspect of wisdom is something which we find only in these teachings. And even in the teachings which are still found in India to this day, there is the notion of self, of I, me and mine, belief in some sort of permanent entity, permanent state. But the enlightened ones rejected all this, realizing the happiness of nibbana or nirvana, the unconditioned, the unborn, the unoriginated happiness which is attainable right here, right now, within the heart. The whole of so-called existence is creation of the mind. The enlightened ones pointed out that the consciousness is akin to a conjurer, which conjures up various delusions, being like a conjurer sitting at a crossroads, and it is very, very easy indeed to fall for those tricks. The most subtle one being a delusion that the consciousness is I, me and mine. But once one begins the practice of insight knowledge, and I know that the vast majority of people who attend these centres, wherever, including in London, where I am based, are very concerned with the heart of the teachings. Many coming to seek these teachings due to encountering some experiences in life which lead people to really seek an escape from suffering and unsatisfactoriness, which actually happened to myself when I was 13 years old, and even before that. After around the age of 9, I believe, when I began wondering about the nature of existence, the catalyst for which I believe was the suffering that I witnessed of my own mother, who had suffered for a long period of time, which was very moving. And so the teachings of the enlightened ones offer a true solution in getting to the heart of the cause of unsatisfactoriness and rooting out the thorn of suffering and unsatisfactoriness for good, not just treating the symptoms, but actually uprooting that cause. We do develop concentration on this path, which is also something which can be attached to, but in the practice of teachings of the Enlightened Ones, this is merely a tool in order to cross the stream of unsatisfactoriness and even the attachment to very subtle states of concentration is something which was recognized by the Enlightened Ones as not leading to non-attachment, and in fact the teachers of the Bodhisattva, who had developed very, very exalted states of concentration, were unable to gain the opportunity to develop insight knowledge in a way which facilitated their liberation from this process of being, of rebirth, in spite of the fact that they had developed concentration to the very, very highest stages and had taught the Bodhisattva the states of concentration which he rejected as being liberation in itself. So evidently the Bodhisattva was an extremely unique being. These subtle states of concentration can very easily be construed as being sufficient in order to deal with suffering and unsatisfactoriness, but are themselves still possessed of the seeds of unsatisfactoriness in terms of the fact that these states themselves are impermanent and they are conditioned. And when after a very long period of time, karmic energy which led to the arising of those states is expended, then one is back to square one, and because of the very, very fickle nature of the mind, the untrained heart, then one may be reborn in any of a number of states, including that of an animal, or even an angry spirit, a hungry spirit, or in the hell worlds themselves. When the forces of greed, hate and delusion re-emerge, these forces can be very powerful. I once read or was taught regarding the case of a certain yogi who had developed the absorptions to a very high level and had developed psychic powers, including the ability to both, I guess, levitate and to travel in the air, as in fact some yogis in India have been reputed to do. But due to the ripening of some past fruit of action, what we call karma vipaka, he had seen a female form and very, very strong attachment had arisen to the point where it was irresistible, apparently irresistible, and at that moment that yogi lost those powers, and if I recall rightly, actually fell from the sky and became enslaved due to the power of lust and attachment to the forms that were seen. So such is the power of forces of lust, and its flip side, aversion, and in its extreme form, hatred and revengefulness. These are two sides of the same coin, being two sides of the same coin. When the cause of the arising of attachment is still latent, when that issue has not been dealt with in terms of uprooting its cause, namely through the practice of development of wisdom, through realizing the characteristics of existence. As long as this understanding is not there, then the mind is fooled, delusion arises, and delusion is present due to the perception of things as somehow being lasting, as somehow being satisfactory, or as something satisfactory somehow being able to be achieved or acquired. And this notion of self, if not in the form of the actual belief in a personality, just this lingering feeling, this perception of self, I, me and mine. As long as this is not dissolved, then the forces of greed and hate will arise. Even the stream enterer is still possessed of significant degree of sense desire and ill will, though the difference, and a very, very, very big difference indeed, is that the stream enterer has seen down into the, as it were, chasm of enlightenment, and had a glimpse of Nibbana, and has seen and shattered this delusion of a personality, to the point where, as mentioned, from that stage on, there is no going back, and these forces of greed and hate they gradually melt away, culminating in the attainment of arahantship, through the stages of once returner, non-returner, and then arahantship. But as long as one has not shattered that delusion of a personality, then one will be in effect thrown about from pillar to post by the forces of greed and hate, of attachment and aversion. And though one may be temporarily satisfied upon the gratification of sense desire and feel that one has eaten one's fill, as it were, the craving re-emerges and will continue to pester one, in a sense. And the temptations will arise again. And this cycle goes on and on until such time as one develops the insight knowledge into, crucially, the truth of impermanence, and developing the perception of impermanence, which is the key to understanding the three characteristics of existence, namely impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self. What is impermanent cannot be satisfactory. What is impermanent and unsatisfactory cannot be self, as it is beyond one's ability to change. And therefore, this is not in any way a satisfactory state of affairs. What is conditioned, what is dependent upon the laws of cause and effect, is also deeply unsatisfactory. Being dependent upon something, that is the crucial factor, that as long as something is dependent upon something else, then that cannot be a satisfactory state of affairs. However, the liberation from all unsatisfactoriness, namely nibbana, is not dependent upon anything else at all. And this is therefore referred to as the unconditioned, the unborn, the unoriginated, and is attained within the heart right here and now. We, as it were, turn inwards and do not rely anymore on external forms of happiness, and therefore we remove the thorn of suffering finally. And this happiness of nirvana is something which arises when the flame of craving is extinguished. Pure and simple. Right here and now. But this is something which arises due to insight knowledge, the attainment of very subtle states of concentration, such as the formless realms, as is experienced in the so-called formless realms of existence, is extremely subtle, and, if I remember rightly, described as, say, 16 times more pleasurable than that of the most delightful sensory experiences. And yet, the happiness of nirvana, nibbana, is many more times as, in inverted commas, pleasurable than the happiness experienced through the attainment of the highest states of concentration, due to the fact that one is released from all the seeds of unsatisfactoriness, and one is no longer reliant. There is the final release from all that has caused unsatisfactoriness. One does not need to lean anymore on any external forms of happiness. So, to this end, we develop mindfulness, concentration, and insight. The mindfulness spoken of by the enlightened ones, not mere mindfulness or bare awareness, but mindfulness and clear comprehension. Mindfulness based on insight and on wisdom. Again, very unique aspect of the teachings of the enlightened ones. This practice of mindfulness has now been repackaged, recycled, imported to the West, and is what we find within the culture of popular mindfulness, which is beneficial to people, and yet the intent is very different. It does lead to people benefiting in the sense of feeling good, but is practiced with a worldly intent. But here we transcend any worldly intent with our view to transcending the world, in inverted commas. And mindfulness is a tool enabling us to do this, coupled with concentration and insight. The enlightened ones did very often indeed speak of the great benefits of the development of concentration to a very high degree, the development of the absorptions, in order to be able to develop the power of the heart in the strengthening of insight and wisdom, like a laser beam, which is focused on the meditation on impermanence, development of the perception of impermanence to shatter the delusion, leading to development of insight knowledge. So today we find that these teachings have been used in some cases, perhaps even unconsciously, by certain figures in this world to bolster their egos. People love to appear as being various types of appealing figures, and the mind plays all sorts of tricks, and it's very easy for people to end up projecting egos in even involvement with the teachings of what non-self, but when one develops this insight knowledge, then one is actually genuinely humbled, understanding that the body is very, very impermanent indeed, and particularly as monks and nuns, when we contemplate upon the undesirable nature of the body, then just under the surface the actual reality of these things is apparent. And the fact that one simply cannot avert the fundamental nature of existence, that is, in the physical realm, the facts of aging, sickness, death, suffering, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief and despair, when attachment arises towards the body and the perception of the notion of an I, me and mine. And, for example, the fact that this body is reliant on physical food and air and water and medicine, things like this, and is so very fragile in that sense. I myself, due to having had tropical illnesses, rely on medicine, and I was truly humbled, having gone through intense suffering whilst in Asia, at the fragility of one's existence, and therefore personally one has no illusions as to the precariousness of this existence, and this leads to the weariness of samsara. I myself, for whatever reasons, as a young boy, felt the weariness of samsara. I believe through some sort of spiritual maturity. As mentioned, I was aided by witnessing very powerfully suffering in this life in the form of the suffering of my own mother, who suffered from epilepsy for a long period of time. And though I too had certain desires, the desires of youth and so on, the wish to escape from suffering was more powerful than this. And one was possessed of this feeling of weariness. And actually, I recall that at the time, a lot of children and young people around me did not appear to either understand that or have that quality at all. I did not feel inclined to engage in frivolity in the way that many children do at that time. I was wondering about the nature of existence, and feeling very tired. Once one gets old, then one does tend to get weary, and in the same way, I believe that after a long period of time in this journey through the round of being this and being that, one will come to a point where this feeling of weariness does arise, in spite of the temptations which are constantly thrown up by way of the six sense faculties, by way of the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body and the mind, the temptations. But when one feels the precariousness of this existence, then one is always reminded through feeling unstable and insecure of the need to deal with that, to address that. And through some great fortune, I myself encountered the teachings of the Enlightened Ones, initially at a Thai temple, though I was ordained in the Sri Lankan tradition of Theravada. I initially had contact with a Thai temple, and for some reason I immediately felt attracted towards monks, towards the teachings, towards Buddhism in general. And when I read the basic points of Dharma in a number of very fundamental publications on Buddhism, I immediately felt attracted to these teachings, because the Enlightenments go right to the heart of what concerns all beings, and that is addressing the question of suffering and unsatisfactoriness, which the answer to which was what I was basically concerned with in this quest to deal with this feeling of insecurity and weariness with life in general. One sees that, in contrast, there are so many beings in this world who are truly infatuated, intoxicated with the sensory world, and this is juxtaposed with those who are preoccupied with the spiritual path, and each party will view each other as crazy in some cases. For example, one thinks of certain celebrities, certain musicians cavorting around on stages, such as performers and so on, who are intoxicated with sensory experience, and who may very well look at those who are involved with the spiritual path, such as meditators, on other stages, the spiritual stage, meditating and viewing them as being somehow crazy. I once recall sitting in a meditation posture in a forest hermitage in Sri Lanka, and being passed by some visitors who saw me in the meditation posture, and I remember overhearing someone whispering that I must be crazy. Actually, I had covered my head with a robe, I think, for whatever reasons at that time. But even so, people's view of those who reject the normal temptations of the world can, as said, be very, very different from those involved in the spiritual path. And actually people find this alarming, and therefore I don't believe that in this world there will ever be a majority of people who will pursue this particular path. The enlightened one stated that those who escape from this round of being are compared to a few birds who escape from a net. And so it is, because it is not easy to escape from this net of craving and aversion, and even getting to the point where one understands that there is an issue may be difficult for some people, who will find it difficult to accept that there is a problem in the first place. In order to develop on this path, one needs to be possessed of right view, in inverted commas, that is, the Four Noble Truths. Right view was enumerated by the enlightened ones as the understanding of the Four Noble Truths, meaning unsatisfactory is the cause, the cessation, and the path leading to the cessation of it. But there are many in this world who will not wish even to accept that there is a problem in the form of unsatisfactoriness, labeling teachings such as Buddhism as being pessimistic, which is a very superficial way of looking at this. If they reflect for a moment upon the Four Noble Truths and the fact that, together with revealing the noble truth of unsatisfactoriness, the Buddhas reveal the path and the fact of the cessation of suffering and unsatisfactoriness in a very, very positive way. In fact, that if one strives, then one can indeed liberate oneself from this whole mass of unsatisfactoriness in a relatively short period of time, through the development of certain very wholesome qualities, such as the 5 powers, namely energy, confidence, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and insight. And as a boy myself, I was very impressed with the methodical nature of these teachings, the clarity of these teachings, the practicality of these teachings, the simplicity, in a sense, of these teachings, the relevance of these teachings, and with the tremendous wisdom and compassion of the Enlightened One. There was something else behind it, I believe, because as soon as I read about the Buddha and the fact that he had been a prince and then had renounced all that and wandered the highways and byways of northern India for the welfare of beings, there was this very powerful attraction to this inspiration. Never mind the living example of certain figures in recent times, the great example is that of the Bodhisattva himself, the Enlightened One himself, who in every way did what was very difficult to do and renounced the luxuries that he had grown up in since birth and made the greatest sacrifice because of this all-consuming need to address this issue and get to grips with this question of unsatisfactoriness, which is felt at a very deep level, which is a manifestation of the weariness of samsara. Once one has eaten one's fill, then there comes a time when one will feel that one has had sufficient, but with the development of insight understanding, then this propensity to the re-emergence of that craving will gradually disappear, and that hunger will no longer arise. So, in the case of the Bodhisattvas, this weariness is the culmination of a very long journey indeed, and that temptation no longer arises to the extent that they are able to make that great renunciation without any sort of hesitation, and there is no regret. In my own case, I have never regretted embracing these teachings and following this path and ordaining as a novice at a very young age, and then as a monk, and living this life, because one had a feeling of very, very strong conviction from a very young age due to the relevance and practicality of these teachings. I'm aware now that the time has passed, and I have been speaking, I think, for over 1 hour. So I am very happy to have had this opportunity to address this gathering, some of whom amongst this group may be seasoned practitioners of Dharma. These teachings are relevant to a universal audience. So I sincerely hope that all present will be able to benefit from these very rare and wonderful teachings, and to be able to strive to put these teachings into practice, the teachings of mindfulness, concentration and insight, and to be able to work out one's own liberation from the weariness of samsara, even in this very life itself. May you all be well and happy. May you all attain to liberation from the weariness of samsara without delay. So from now on, from this point on, please feel free to ask any questions if you like.
Thank you, Venerable, for the talk. We are over time. Perhaps we can have one question from the audience. I'll just grab a microphone.
The session ends at 9, am I correct?
Hello. Thank you so much for the talk. It was amazing. I'm just wondering how one would go about bringing the concepts into their daily life of the non-self.
Into daily life, day-to-day life. What was that? The what of non-self?
The concept, well, that's probably the wrong word, but yeah, non-self. Everyday, sort of mundane things.
Yeah. I mean, if one wishes to develop insight, understanding as a lay person, then that is, fine, because here we are endeavouring to achieve liberation from suffering, which is fully justified. So, normally in lay life, for certain reasons, it may be challenging, but I mean, it's the development of this perception of. Sorry, was that something? Right. Okay. Yeah, just relax and sit on a chair if you like. No problem. Yeah. So, sorry, could you repeat that again? Just finally. Yeah.
How to bring the concept of non-self into daily life.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So just to develop the four foundations of mindfulness. This is the path. This was spoken of by the enlightened ones as being the path. That is mindfulness based upon the physicality, the physical nature of things, feelings and perceptions, mind states and mental objects, and being aware and coupled with the development of mindfulness and concentration, just gradually developing the awareness of the changing nature of these things, making a note from moment to moment of these things, you see, to the point where the perception of impermanence will gradually become stronger and stronger, So, in a nutshell, So, yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you.
I can hear if you speak without the mic, actually.
Impermanence means nothing is permanent.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, that's right. Everything dies, doesn't it? Is that what you're saying?
Dies meaning everything. Yeah. Changing, rising and falling, changing all the time. So, but this understanding needs to be cultivated, not just the intellectual idea of it, so that one actually sees it. You see, it's like being handed a jar of honey, and imagining the taste of it, right, as opposed to actually tasting it, so to speak. When you actually taste it, then you know. So when you actually see through these truths, then you actually see it with insight, understanding. So it's really not really expressible in words, So, yeah.
Hello, Ajahn. Thank you for a wonderful talk. I had a question around one of your sharing. Like it was, you mentioned that even one should not attach to pleasurable states of meditation. And what they have to do then, like if they, for example, if somebody is attached to pleasurable states of meditation and he's enjoying those pleasurable states, then what he have to do next to let go of that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, to be aware of those. Yeah, to be aware of the nature of feeling and sensation for a start. Which is one of the four foundations of mindfulness. The fact that these things are not permanent. They are impermanent. They are unsatisfactory. They are non-self. So, but of course, it is very easy to get intoxicated by very subtle states of concentration as well. And unless one develops this insight's understanding, then there will be very little motivation to look for an alternative, you see. So, Any other questions?
So you were saying then, about meditation and how you get into a feeling, a good feeling. You're not supposed to get into that good feeling? Oh, I don't have to worry about that, mate. Thank you.
It's for the online audience.
Oh, well then maybe you do have to worry about it.
Sorry?
Thanks, man.
All right.
You were saying don't have that pleasurable feeling of deep meditation?
No. It's not a question of don't have that feeling. There's nothing wrong with the experience of pleasure. No. Some misunderstand this. Any sort of feeling of pleasure, including relatively coarse, gross physical pleasure, there's nothing wrong with it. It is what it is, but the attachment to that is problematic. The attachment to it is not wrong, but it is problematic, the craving for more, the pursuit in dharmic terms of more is wrong. Which is propelled by craving, but the actual experience of pleasure itself, no. But if one develops insight, one will not become attached to the experience of pleasure, nor will one feel averse at displeasure. They are what they are. Displeasure meaning actually once insight understanding is developed, one will not suffer psychologically, but there will be physical suffering. So when pain arises, for example, aversion will not arise to that, because the craving for either something pleasurable or the absence of that displeasure will not be there, So one will observe these things as they are, pleasure, displeasure, pleasant sensations, unpleasant sensations, neutral or neither pleasant nor unpleasant feelings. They are what they are. They're not I, not me, not mine. One views them objectively. So
I always thought that when you meditated, if it felt good, that was the right way to go.
When
you meditated,
yeah,
and you got to that level of nothingness or whatever, everything sort of goes away, that was what you wanted. That was a good feeling. And you're saying, don't have that good feeling?
No. Any good feeling is simply what it is. It's just a feeling. So we make a note of this and do not attach to any sorts of feelings at all. All these feelings, such as pleasant, unpleasant, and neither pleasant nor unpleasant feelings, are what they are. But the attachment to that is something else. We experience these sensations, but the attachment to it is something extra. It's extra baggage, which is the problem. That's what's going to cause the problem, when there's the attachment to it. The attachment is caused by the craving, which is caused due to not seeing the nature of these things, non-understanding of these things, not seeing the nature of basically impermanence, So we only find these teachings in the teachings of the Buddhas. Nowhere else is this to be found, not in this way, unless someone's borrowed these teachings, Okay. You need to wind up now, do you?
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you, Ajahn.
Of course.
Thank you, Venerable, for giving your teachings to us this evening. We're very grateful for you coming into the BSV and offering these teachings to us. Please pay your respects to Venerable.
I will end with just a short blessing then, in the Pali language. Okay. Sukhi hotu abhivadana silissa niccang vadda pachayino chattaro dhamma vaddanti ahivanno sukhang balang bhavatu sabba mangalang rakhantu sabba devata sabba buddhanubhavena sada sotti bhavantu te bhavatu sabba mangalang rakhantu sabba devata sabba dhammanubhavena sada sotti bhavantu te bhavatu sabba mangalang rakhantu sabba devata sabba sanghanubhavena sada sotti bhavantu te. By the power of all the Buddhas, the power of the Dharma and the power of the Sangha, may you all be well and happy. May you all realize the truth leading to liberation from the round of samsara without delay.